Welcome to part 3 of the S9478 sew along. When I left you in the last video, I said I was going to sew the center front frame to the side frame. I went ahead and I sewed the side frame to the back band as well as the cups together, the center front cup to the side cup, matching the lace at the top edge. I did this because it is a confidence boost. Once I put these pieces together, it really starts to look like a bra. And I'm like, yes, let's do it. What's the next step? Let's go. So hopefully it's the same for you, and that it gets you motivated so it doesn't turn out to be a UFO. For all of these steps, I used a straight stitch, 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. For the side seam, as well as sewing the cups together, I serged the edges. If you don't have a serger, that's okay. You can leave the edges raw and then press the seam allowances to one side and top stitch it down. We're going to be putting in this step, we're going to be putting channeling on here and inserting boning on this center front seam, or the seam that's right underneath the bra cups. For some of you, you might want to put boning and channeling in the side seam as well. That is going to be your choice. We found that across all sizes, it really didn't make a difference as far as preventing the bra from rolling up. What made the most of the difference is if the channeling and the boning was in the seam that was right underneath the bra cups. So I'm going to leave that decision up to you. Another thing is that when you're sewing this, you might be just like me. If you see here, this is a little bit further down than this, totally fine. We're going to clean. I would rather you have the top edges match than the bottom, and then when we go to sew the picot elastic on the bottom, you can clean up that edge. That is a common question that has come up. So the next step is we are going to sew. You're going to take your straight channeling, so the one that isn't curved, and I'll give you a look, the one that isn't curved. And we are going to sew it so that it starts and stops about 1/4 of an inch from the top and bottom edges. So I like to cut it off at this point rather than sew it and then cut it, but that can be up to you. So the key to this is you are not sewing through all layers. You are taking these seam allowances and you are sewing through the original seam. So you want to be that channeling to be right on top. So the channeling should be about 1/8 of an inch to the left of the seam or inside or outside of the seam. But your stitching should be right on the original stitching. We're going to use a straight stitch. Let me actually switch my thread so that my threads match. You want to back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, you see how close I am to that edge? You want to get as close to the inner edge as possible, because if you're, 1/8 of an inch or even 1/4 of an inch, you won't be able to put the channeling inside, which would defeat the purpose of sewing the channeling onto the seam allowance. So you'll do it to the other side. I'm going to move along though for the sake of the tutorial or the sew along. Clip this thread tail. So the next step is we are going to sew the cups to the frame. But in order to do that, we need to finish the inside of the bra cups with picot elastic, with our picot elastic. So let me switch threads again The worst part of this bra is that there is a lot of thread changes with this particular kit, but it's worth it in the end. Okay, so you are going to take your decorative or your regular picot elastic, and with the bra right side face up, I'm going to put the picot elastic down so that I like to always leave a tail at the end, so it should extend a little bit past the edge of the bra. And I'm going to sew it with a zigzag stitch. Now, if you see here, I have it over this portion of this decorative elastic, 1/4 of an inch. So I'm having this decorative picot elastic hang over about 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to sew with a zigzag stitch. Again, your zigzag stitch is going to vary from machine to machine, but you want it to be about the half of the width of this part of the elastic, not the decorative part. And question I always get is how much should you stretch the elastic? Just if you see just a slight bit, not a lot. The act of sewing elastic stretches it out, so you're just giving it a little bit of a tug to compensate for it. Top the elastic, there's a little bit of a tail at the top, and this is what it should look like after. It's really important that your stitches, your zigzag stitches, are as close to that edge where the decorative portion starts. You don't want your zigzag stitches to be kind of inside or towards the middle, because when you flip it back to sew the second pass, you'll be able to see that portion of the elastic. All right, so I'm going to flip it back, and I'm going to again switch my thread so that it looks really nice and neat. And sew the second pass. Now on the second pass, on the first pass, I wanted to get really close to the decorative edge. On the second pass, I'm going to get really close to the other edge. Now you can sew it with the wrong side face up or the right side face up, whatever is more comfortable for you. If you're a newbie, I would suggest doing with the wrong side face up so you know that you're catching the other edge. If you're more experienced, you can go with the right side face up. I've sewn a couple bras at this point, so I'm gonna go with the right side face up. But you can use whatever you feel comfortable with. So that's what it should look like after. When you have the little this eyelash kit, I like to pull the eyelashes from the lace out of the zigzag stitches so that you can see them, because it is a nice and pretty detail. Alrighty, let's get these attached to the bra so that it starts to really, really, really look like a bra. It just kind of looks like a bra right now. So we are going to with the right sides together. Now the key with this is that you want the edge of the decorative elastic to be lining up with the edge of the V opening. You do not want the decorative elastic hanging over the V opening. So when you put the right sides together, you want to make sure that, again, the edge of the decorative elastic is aligning with the edge of the opening. And we're going to sew this with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, straight stitch. Good news is that I do not have to switch my threads at this step, which is woo, I'm happy about. Now your seam on your bra should line up with your vertical seam on your frame. If it doesn't, perfection is overrated, and just give yourself a pat on the back for making it this far and move on. Seriously, nobody will notice. But if you're a perfectionist, it's always great if like it does line up. But yeah, okay. I like to pin it at the beginning, the seam, and then the end, and then two pin in between. Which this is an extra small, so there's not much in between. I wish my girls were a little bit bigger, but I got these A cups, AB cups. Okay. So I like starting at the beginning or at the opening so that I nail the decorative elastic lining up with the V opening. There's a little tail right there that's in a knot. Back to the straight stitch. Back stitch at the beginning and the end. You also want to make sure that the seam allowance on your frame is pointing towards the side. So you see how it's lined up? My vertical seam isn't lined up, so I didn't even get it lined up, which I'm cool with. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with that. You can't really notice. So, all right. And then the next step is that you are going to sew the last step of this video is you're going to sew the channeling onto the wire seam line. Now it's important that you have the cup face up. You do not want to have it with the frame face up. So have it with the cup face up. And you're going to sew it the same way that you did before with the channeling at the underneath the frame. In that you're going to lay it over. You are going to stitch right on top of your stitches that you made before. And then you want to start at the center front, and at the side, you want to stop about, let's say 3/8 of an inch before the edge. Now I made a boo-boo and I sewed it to the side without the channeling on it. So I'm going to take this out, sew that on, then sew this on, and then show you the finished product, and then you'll be able to see it. Yeah, did I just say perfection is overrated? Perfection is overrated. So I'll be back. Okay, so this is where your bra should be at the end of this video. So to recap, what I took out my boo-boo, and I re-sewed the, well, I didn't re-sew. I added the channeling to the vertical seam. Then I put both cups in, and then I sewed the channeling. And what I wanted to show you was that the channeling, I started the stitching right at the edge, but then on this edge, at the underarm edge, I stopped my stitching about 3/8 of an inch from the edge. You need this in order to get clearance when you sew the picot elastic on. One thing to note is that I did trim my seam allowances underneath the channeling. I had my seam allowances for the vertical seams pressed towards the side. I have not put in the boning or the demi underwires if you're putting them in. So don't do that yet. We'll do that at a later step. So this is where you should be. I would give yourself a big pat on the back for making it this far. And really, it's smooth sailing from here. So in the next step, we are in the next video part of the sew along. We will be, we're almost there. We will be sewing the picot elastic along the outer cup as well as the top of the back band. At the bottom, finishing off the channeling and the boning, and then oxidizing rings and sliders. So I will see you, or not see you, but until the next video.